Alright, what's up guys? Got another idea of what if Palpatine raised Luke and Leia. So I started a Cash App if you want to donate, if you have a video idea. If you do, I'll try and make it into a short or a video. So the Cash App will be linked down below. You don't have to donate, but you can if you want to. But if you like this type of content, then be sure to subscribe for more what if / fanfics, lore, comics, reviews, video essays, and just all things Star Wars. But with all that out of the way, why don't we just dive right on in. So the story starts out during the event of Revenge of the Sith. Yoda and Palpatine's fight ends earlier than normal, and Yoda goes back to Polis Massa while Palpatine heads to Mustafar. As Palpatine lands, he sees on a lava bank Obi-Wan standing over a charred Anakin. He scowled. His apprentice failed. Of course he did. Every apprentice he had so far had been an utter disappointment, but he looked over and saw Padme's ship and smiled. He would have a better, stronger apprentice soon. He heard Obi-Wan speak, saying that Anakin was the chosen one and that it was said that he would destroy the Sith, not join them. And in that moment, Obi-Wan heard Palpatine laughing. Obi-Wan had a grim look on his face as he turned around and saw Palpatine with a squadron of clones. Kenobi realized that Yoda must have failed, and now he had no choice. It was up to him. Obi-Wan ignited his saber and the clones blasted at him, but he managed to block each one, deflecting the bolts back onto the clone troopers, killing most of them. Palpatine ordered them to stop firing, and he cackled as he ignited 2 crimson sabers. "Your Jedi are dead, Master Kenobi, and soon you'll join them." Obi-Wan grimaced. "I will do what I must and stop you, Chancellor." And with that, Palpatine launched with the Sith scream with both sabers in hand towards Obi-Wan. He managed to block both sabers as they crashed on top of him. He struggled under the weight, but pushed the Sith Lord back. He took a defensive stance as Palpatine switched between forms to throw Obi-Wan off balance. Kenobi was still exhausted with his duel with Anakin, and he couldn't keep up with Palpatine's speed. Before he could react, Darth Sidious rushed forward, slashing upward, cutting off both his arms, and then turning around, cackling, as he jammed both sabers into his gut. Obi-Wan fell to the ground, and Palpatine laughed as he pushed his body into the lava. After Obi-Wan's death, Palpatine walked over to his apprentice, and looked at utter disappointment. He couldn't even defeat Kenobi. He outlived his usefulness. Anakin begged, "Master, I did it. I killed the Jedi. Save me and Padme." Palpatine sighed. "You are weak, Lord Vader." As Palpatine turned around, he looked at his apprentice and left him to die. He ordered the clones to retrieve Padme and to take her back to Coruscant. On the city planet, Palpatine watched as Padme gave birth to the twins, whom she named Luke and Leia, and he couldn't contain his laughter. 2 apprentices would be better than 1. Padme asked where Anakin was, and Palpatine spoke. "Oh, my dear Senator Amidala, your husband is dead, and so are the Jedi." Palpatine laughed as he walked away, and Padme began crying, and eventually died of a broken heart. Back on Polis Massa, Yoda feared the worst and realized that Obi-Wan was dead. He had failed as Grand Master of the Jedi, and he said nothing to Bail as he left Polis Massa and headed to Dagobah, where he would spend the rest of his days in self-exile. Palpatine and medical droids take care of Luke and Leia as he sat on the throne of his new empire, but back on Mustafar, Anakin was nowhere to be seen. He had used all of his hate, all of his anger to pull himself to where he killed the Separatist Council. He used his hatred to keep him alive. He found an old medical droid and used the last of his strength to tinker with it, and to use it to heal himself. He would have his revenge. 20 years passed, and Luke and Leia had grown powerful in the dark side. Luke was strong like Anakin, but he was prone to anger, and he was headstrong. Leia was more cunning. However, she was a borderline psychopath and enjoyed watching other life forms in pain and suffering. Palpatine taught them various aspects of the Force and sent them out on many missions. However, there was a talk of a rebellion, and Palpatine ordered Luke and Leia to be at the helm to crush any resistance. The Grand Inquisitor served his purpose of hunting Jedi, as did the other Inquisitors, but after 2 decades, Palpatine ordered Luke and Leia to hunt down and kill any remaining Inquisitors. Palpatine looked upon his empire with an evil smirk. His apprentices would soon inherit this empire. But as Palpatine sat on his throne room on Coruscant, in what was the Jedi Temple but was now his palace, he saw a figure walk in and ignite a red lightsaber. He ordered his royal guards to end this intruder, but they were quickly struck down. The figure moved like a blur, but with unimaginable strength. He felt into the Force, and Palpatine was in shock. Something he hadn't foreseen. His former apprentice had survived. As he walked into the light, Darth Vader emerged, showing his new and better suit, one he had given everything for. After being burned and left to die in Mustafar, Anakin barely survived, and after finding the medical droid, crawled his way to Padme's ship and put it into hyperdrive before passing out. And when he woke up, the dark side had led him to Exegol, where he encountered the Sith Eternal, who healed him and rebuilt him, creating an unstoppable suit and monster. Vader tested his abilities on the Sith Eternal and had trained for 20 years, and today was the day he would kill Palpatine. The Emperor laughed and shot lightning at Vader, but he simply blocked with the saber. Palpatine spoke. "So it appears as if you have lived, Lord Vader." Vader didn't speak, and Palpatine took that as his answer. He used the Force to grab 2 crimson sabers, and the duel between former apprentice and master began. Palpatine leapt with the Sith scream and began the onslaught on Vader. His speed was incredible, but Vader held his own, blocking each strike. It had been years since Palpatine had been in actual combat, but he still moved like a shadow in the darkness of the palace. His movements were fluid, and he changed between each form. However, Vader trained for this day for 20 years straight, and Palpatine hadn't dueled in years. The apprentice had surpassed the master. Palpatine went for a strike, but Vader sidestepped, and just like Dooku, he cut off Palpatine's hands. The Emperor fell to the ground in shock, and looked up as Vader plunged his saber down into his throat. At that moment, every other major Force user in the galaxy felt it. The death of the Emperor, and the rise of a new darkness. Luke and Leia felt the death of their master, but they smiled. They would kill whatever fool ended Palpatine and take the Empire for themselves. But in a cave on Dathomir, Darth Maul, now just Maul, felt his old master's death. It was time to come out and have some fun. And in the rebellion, Ahsoka felt it. Vader ripped his saber from his master and took a seat on his new throne. Emperor Vader would make the galaxy his now. Back with Luke and Leia, they made contact with the rebel base on Yavin 4, and a massive battle began with both sides even. However, it changed with Luke jumping into an X-Wing and entering the battle. He was the greatest pilot in the Empire, and he ravaged the rebel fleet. With this came the bombardment of the rebel base and the deaths of major key rebel players such as Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Admiral Akbar, and many more. Ahsoka felt this and knew it was time, as she had made contact with Yoda and Dagobah, and the two had begun to form a new Jedi Order with the likes of Cal Kestis, Kelleran Beck, and many more. The Jedi Order would take back the galaxy. Yoda knew he didn't have much time left, but Obi-Wan and the rest of the Jedi's deaths weighed on him heavily. However, self-exile wasn't going to change anything. He failed as a Grand Master once. He wouldn't do it again. On Dagobah, the Jedi were readying themselves before something came out of hyperspace in the atmosphere. They looked up in shock and saw something the size of a moon. It was the Death Star. Darth Vader had taken control of the Empire and acted as the Emperor now, and he took control of the Death Star that was recently built. The plans were almost stolen by the rebels, but Luke made quick sure to ensure that didn't happen. However, as Vader sat in his throne about to launch into hyperspace, an Empire armada exited from hyperspace and he felt something. A connection to not one, but 2 beings. He allowed them to enter the Death Star, and Luke and Leia made contact with their father. Vader was in shock, but Luke and Leia looked at each other. They would play the part for now. But right now, they bowed before their father, Darth Vader, Emperor of the Galaxy. But at that moment, all 3 heard a saber ignite, and Vader looked and grimaced as he saw Darth Maul. Obi-Wan was dead, so Maul didn't die at Tatooine. Luke and Leia ignited their sabers, but Vader told them to step away. He would deal with this failure. Vader walked up from his throne and ignited his saber, and the two engaged in a duel. Maul leapt forward with a wide strike, but Vader blocked it. The battle was fierce, with Maul giving it his all, but he quickly realized how outmatched he truly was. Vader had surpassed him, and that could be seen by how the Dark Lord of the Sith wasn't taking this fight seriously. Maul tried taunting Vader, but it didn't work, and the fight ended as quickly as it began, with Vader blocking an attack and force choking Maul, picking him up, and bringing him over to choke him with his hand. Maul was struggling to breathe, but Vader didn't stop, and he slammed his head into the ground, creating a massive crater, and then jammed his lightsaber into his back, killing Maul instantly. Luke and Leia saw the power their father possessed, but then they felt it. The Jedi. Vader ordered the Death Star to go into hyperspace, and they reached the swampy planet of Dagobah. Vader felt the Jedi survivors, but most importantly Yoda and Ahsoka. He would end them in an instant. He hated the idea of using the Death Star, but he wouldn't give the Jedi the glory of even attempting to strike him down. And the Planet Killer launched a beam down onto Dagobah, destroying the planet. And on the ground, Ahsoka and Yoda realized it was too late, and their deaths would be imminent. They sighed as the Jedi had lost. There was no more hope for the galaxy, and a fiery explosion consumed the planet, destroying it and killing every inhabitant on it, including the Jedi. Vader smiled. The galaxy was his. No one would stand in his way now. But he quickly learned his mistake when he felt 2 sabers through his chest. He looked behind and saw Luke and Leia with their lightsabers ignited, stabbing him. Vader coughed and fell to the ground dead, having been caught off guard and killed by his own children. Luke and Leia laughed but stopped as they ripped the sabers from their father and pointed it to each other. Everything that happened so far was insignificant compared to this moment. Brother against sister. Twin versus twin. The duel began with Leia jumping into the air with a Sith scream like Palpatine and Luke blocking it with ease. Leia had incredible speed and used Force lightning at every chance she could get, but Luke was physically stronger in every way. He blocked each strike, and every swing he made crippled Leia physically. Luke was a master duelist, and he even surpassed the likes of Dooku in lightsaber combat, even at the age of 20. Leia sped around the room shooting Force lightning, but Luke managed to catch her with the Force choke and slammed her against the wall. She tried to electrocute him, but he cut off her right arm. He jammed his saber into her shoulder, and she screamed in pain. The two siblings looked at each other, hatred in their eyes, which sparkled with the color of the Sith. Luke began choking his sister, but Leia still had her left arm she could move, and she used the Force to call her saber, and it jammed into her brother's back. He looked in shock as he saw a saber through his chest, and Luke loosened his grip and fell to his knees. Leia held her shoulder and lost arm, and walked behind her brother, ripping the saber from him. A tear fell down her face as Luke spoke his last words. "Rule well, sister." She proceeded to use her crimson lightsaber and decapitate her brother. Leia fell to the floor exhausted, but she laughed evilly. The Empire and the galaxy were now hers. Leia took control of the Death Star and headed back to Coruscant, where she took her rightful place as Empress of the Galaxy. She snuffed out any remaining rebel cells, and with no rebellion, Jedi, or other Sith to stand in her way, she dominated the galaxy. Decades passed, and during that time, Leia had kidnapped a smuggler named Han Solo, who she deemed worthy to bear her children, and after having kept him as a pet and having 4 children, she executed him. Leia, now in her 60s, watched as her family spread out their rule, her children and grandchildren carrying on the name of Skywalker as rulers of the galaxy. Alright, and that's the story. Kind of one that's all over the place, but it ended in the way I wanted it to. You know, I wanted to have Luke and Leia fighting to be able to have control of the Empire and the galaxy itself. But I feel it was just an interesting concept to not have Vader raise them, but Palpatine to raise them. In the end, if either of them raise them, they're both turning into fucking monsters. Especially Leia, that bitch is crazy in this. I did Han Solo dirty in the ending, but I mean, to be honest, that's kind of what would happen to bro. But I'm not gonna lie, if Padme asked me to be a breeder, I'm pretty sure I would. I'm pretty sure any Star Wars fan would. Hey, truth is the truth. Who wouldn't do that for Natalie Portman? But overall, if you liked the video, then be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Go check out my other channels. They'll be linked down below. Go donate to the Cash App if you want to see a video. Don't have to, of course, up to you. But with all that out of the way, I will see you all in the next one. Peace.